Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web novel Humans Don't Make Good Familiars, taken from Reddit. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Jake's POV. I couldn't help but smile as our group marched along. But Pack was fuming quietly on the back of his hound, and Vindicta was beaming on top of her feline steed. At least he's silent, Zuma said over our mental connection. I nodded my head to her in agreement. We continued on our journey for as long as the path would take us, until finally it came to an abrupt end. In front of us was the sheer cliff face of the mountain. I could fly up and look for another path, Vindicta offered. No, we should treat this like a real-world scenario and stay low when possible, I said, looking up at the cliff and placing a hand on the rocks. We could climb, but that might be dangerous, I thought aloud. Do not be ridiculous, Von Pack snapped. Paxus isn't suited for climbing. He can't go up like that. His voice was full of irritation, whether due to my naming of Vindicta or by not being able to go up on his familiar. I couldn't tell, but I could guess. I could climb up it, but it would take a while, I said, and then I had a thought. Hey, Vindicta, what about your familiar? She's a cat, and they are pretty good at climbing. Orgosa might be able to, she said hesitantly, but I don't know. It's a steep climb after all, and she is no Jadu. It's probably safer just to go around, I concluded. So, left or right? The POV of Lorik Isbala, son of Count Thikoma Isbala. Wait up, Lorik, one of the two nameless Niema on my team called out to me. I slowed my familiar's pace so as to not leave them behind and give them a chance to catch up. My familiar was a black serpent named Loyalty. Thank you, sir, the Niema said upon catching up with me. You do not need to call me sir, just call me Lorik, I told him. I glanced down to his familiar. It was some kind of four-legged mammal, with horns on its head and fangs hanging from its mouth. It seemed tired, huffing and puffing heavily, so we all decided to come to a stop and rest for a while. Your familiar doesn't seem to have much stamina, I noted. No, I'm afraid not, the Niema said, but he can hit quite hard with his horns, and his fangs make great weapons as well. Our familiars aren't as wondrous as yours, Lorik, the other teammate, also nameless, said. He wasn't wrong. My familiar was of exceptionally high quality. But that shouldn't matter. No, they are not, but no matter how strong a familiar, it is useless without a competent master. It wouldn't matter how strong loyalty is if I was a fool, I told them. Tell me, are you two fools? They seemed taken back by the question, perhaps even offended, but answered nonetheless, No, I don't believe so. Hopefully not. Then you have nothing to worry about, I said. Your familiars are yours, nobody else's. Treat them well and they will die for you, with or without the right of dominance. That's why I named mine Loyalty. After a little while longer, we started our travels up the mountain once more. Eventually, we came to a large cliffside, but for our familiars it was of no consequence. My black serpent was able to slither between the cracks in the rock and slowly make its way up with me, perched on the saddle on its head. The others were faring better, actually. Once familiar was able to scale the cliff by walking up it and keeping its body close to the rocks. It almost seemed impossible. The other's familiar had large claws and tremendous legs, which it used to leap repeatedly from protruding rock to the next. I was the last one to make it up the cliff, almost 2 minutes after the others. As soon as we were all up, we were on our way. The POV of Vindicta. We, that being my team and I, walked along the cliffside looking for a path to take up the mountain. I sat in my familiar, Orgosa, thinking about my new name, Vindicta. I was so excited I almost couldn't focus on our task. It was unbelievable. Me, a named Niema. I was absolutely giddy, thinking about what my little sister would say when I told her. Oh wow, Sada, you're so cool. Sada was the nickname she gave me since I didn't have a name before. My nickname for her was Bobo, because of how often she hurt herself growing up. She is the only family I have left. And because of that, we are very close. Our parents became sick and died 2 years ago, and I'd been raising her ever since then. She's staying with a friend of mine while I'm doing my tour in the army. I have to repay this kindness to Sentinel. Jake, I thought to myself. Up there, Von Pack announced, and drew the attention to a small portion of cliffside that was broken, and the opening fell below the tree line. We can fly up there and then resummon our familiars and continue our trek. That's a good idea, I said, looking up at the hole in the mountain. I know it is, and I don't need a nameless Niema like you to tell me, he exclaimed. I have a name now, or weren't you paying attention? I declared proudly. A familiar can't give names when the Grand Duke says so. I refuse to recognize it, he stated, and flew up to the crack in the mountain. I admit what he said hurt. Not because I care about his opinion, but because I knew that most nobles would share it. I would likely face trouble back home because of my new name. I could face trouble back at the camp even. I like your name, Suma said, leaving her perch on Jake's saddle and landing beside me on Augustus' saddle. Come on, let's get up there, she said. I'll see you in a sec, Jake said. Then we flew up the side of the cliff. Suma and I landed at the top of the cliff and saw Von Pack already beginning to summon his familiar. I summon you, Paxus, he shouted. I summoned Augusta, and Suma summoned Jake. Once he arrived, he looked at the path up ahead and got a grim look on his face. What's wrong? Suma asked, noticing his expression. Nothing, I just don't like caves is all, he said, gesturing to the entrance of the trail. End of chapter. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to quickly thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Alithia, Barky, Beauty Cure, Meridian 117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholz, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa,